Hello, friends. Welcome to this week's American Mussar Community Gathering. This will be our first week exploring the soul trait of silence, which includes things like meditation, but an awful lot about speech. When should we speak? When shouldn't we speak? What's appropriate to say? What's not appropriate to say? You get the idea. We will begin the way we always do with a short guided meditation. So I invite you to relax and close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass, like watching a car pass by on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Hello, Harry and Joyce. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Okay, so I thought we would start with something that is a little bit spicy, and that I'm not sure I agree with this, but what the heck. So this is just a little snippet from Rabbi Eliezer Papo, who wrote a Musar book called Pele Yost or Yoetz. He wrote it, he was actually Turkish. This was before there was a Turkey, but 19th century, the book was published in Vienna. Um, Really interesting Musar book. It has like 350 tiny little chapters. And I just bring up where he's from because there's sometimes a perception that Musar was just like a Lithuanian thing or an Ashkenazi Jewish thing. But here's someone who is very much from a Sephardic or Mizrahi community who wrote a very important Musar book. So, what he said is that silence to anger is like water to fire. So I'm curious what your reaction is to that. Do you agree, disagree, sometimes? Um, what is his argument, first of all? I'm going to put this in the chat.
Was that the entire statement? That was the only part of that statement?
No, it wasn't the only part.
He didn't explain what he meant by silence?
I don't think he did.
Mm.
But I can see, hang on just a sec. the full quote was, if you can't control yourself from being angry, at least you can keep silent. The angrier, then the anger will be barren and bear no fruits of insults, disputes, and the like. This will also quiet the feelings of anger, since silence to anger is like water to fire. And so, you know, the first part I think kind of makes sense. All right, you don't throw gas on the fire if you speak more. But will silence quiet the feelings of anger? Is it always appropriate to be silent if we're angry? When is this so windy?
Well, at first blush, I said, yep, that's the way. Then I started thinking about it. And I realized that silence, I realized that anger can be like pain could be to you. If you have a pain somewhere, it means you need to take care of it. Now, maybe silence would be, in most cases, a really good way to dispel the anger. But when it comes to water on fire, it depends because you have to have the right amount of water and in the right direction, in the right place, or it just makes it worse. So sometimes yes, and sometimes no.
Yeah. Or if it's like a chemical fire or oil burning or something, you put water on it and that fire is going everywhere. So, yeah, interesting point, Wendy. Toby.
Wow, you stole my thunder,
Oh, I'm
Rabbi.
sorry. Gosh
So I was
darn
going to
it.
say, well, sometimes water will put a fire out, but not all the time. It depends on what kind of a fire you're dealing with. And I guess with anger, it depends on whether the anger is righteous anger, like you're trying to save somebody from being bullied or, from making inappropriate comments, then maybe it's good to speak. Anyway, that's all I have.
Well,
I
thank you.
think water to
I should
fire
have
is a
stayed
good,
silent. Okay, Joyce.
I think it's a good analogy. The if the anger is horrible, there's no amount of fire or water that can quench. So if the anger is horrendous, there's no amount of silence that could make any difference. So I think the analogy is pretty good. I,
Mhm,
I kind of I kind of like it, but it depends on how much anger and how much fire.
mhm.
Um, I think it makes sense. My 2 cents.
Thank you, Joyce. Karen.
I think that in this case, perhaps silence is what puts distance between the match and the fuse.
Hmm.
Um, the anger may not, the reason for the anger doesn't have to go away, but the expression of the anger could be mitigated
Mhm.
by taking some time to not react right away or act right away. That's my thought.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is, it could maybe having silence or some amount of time with silence could maybe get us out of reactivity and slow things down. And I think
Exactly. It
yeah.
reduces the temperature.
Uh-huh.
May not put out the fire, but it reduces the temperature to where it's a, workable issue possibly.
Mhm.
And it buys some time, I think, for the person that's
Yes.
being silent, buys some time to react.
Yeah, it's funny. Get to learn a lot about wildfires living in California, and I'll get to learn even more about them living in Colorado, I'm sure. But like, part of, these planes come and they dump these huge amounts of water. And, the way that the firefighters explain it, it's not so much to put the fire out, but it gets the temperature down. So it becomes something that they can manage, as opposed to just these huge like infernos that just tear through the forest. So I really like that thought about, getting the temperature down. I had something that came up within the last year with somebody I know, and we had had a troubled history and then things have been better. But in this interaction, it was just like I felt really like they were trying to pick a fight with me. And I'm just like, what in the world is going on here? And I just refused to engage. I was just like, I don't think this is the time to discuss this. Let's come back to it another time. And um, and they really pushed. They wanted to kind of get into it, and they're like, "No, no, I really want to." And I was like, if I won't go into all the details, but it was just very clear to me that it could have really been damaging to the relationship if we had engaged in that conversation at that point. Hi, Beth. We're talking about
Hi.
silence. All right, well, let's go a little bit deeper. Let's see. Nope, not that one. This one. Okay, so could somebody please unmute and read the text here?
I will. The primary Mussar guideline for speech is not whether something is true or not, but rather what impact our words will have. If our speech will cause financial, physical, psychological, or other harm, even anxiety or fear, then we are enjoined to hold our tongues.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie. Do we want this in the chat or is it sufficient? So, Bonnie, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, we've been around with this. I was figuring out, Rabbi, that I think I've been with you since the spring of 21.
Wow.
Um, and I think Harry has probably been there along with me that long too. So I have this an acronym that I learned in Al-Anon, which is WAIT. Why am I talking? I need it imprinted on the inside of my left hand and the inside of my right hand, especially when I'm speaking with my adult kids. And because I'm a problem solver and a fixer, that can get me into trouble. So I have finally gotten myself to a point, and I did it with my granddaughter last weekend. I said, "Are you asking me for my opinion or advice?" And when I started to give it to my son, he said, "You're solving." And I didn't ask for you to solve. But my granddaughter said, "Yes, I'd like to know what you think." So it's a sentence that the weight on one hand and the "are you asking me" are things that I am struggling with and working on. And I've told my kids and my grandkids, just send up that white flag and say, "Shut up, Mimi."
Mm.
Anyway, I think it goes along with that quote.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Bonnie. Beth.
I agree with what Bonnie was saying. I was in another webinar recently, and I don't even remember who I was with, but he mentioned this book called Radical Hope. And I got it and I read it while I was on the airplane. And it's about the Crow Nation of Indians. And this leader called Plenty Coup had a vision about the chickadee. And it was like a prophetic vision for his tribe. And that he said the chickadee is a small bird, it's not powerful, but it listens when the wise are speaking and it learns from others from their what they've done right and had success and when they've made mistakes. And it's quiet, it shuts up, and it listens and it learns from
Mm.
others. And he used this whole vision of the chickadee to guide his tribe through the destruction of their cultural of hunting buffalo into he talked them into going to the white man's schools and learning English and dealing with the white man rather than trying to escape him. And they integrated perfectly into well, it was still difficult, but they actually managed to save their tribal lands, and their reservation is on their original lands. They did not lose the
Mm.
lands like so many tribes did. And it was such a powerful message. The book's called Radical Hope, and it spoke to me about the silence that I've tried to practice, and I'm getting a little better at it, but tiny steps.
Thank you, Beth. Susan.
Thanks. I'm coming back to your quote from Alan Marinis about it doesn't matter whether something's true or not, but what the impact is going to be. And I think in your chapter, you also referred to the Joseph Teleschkin book, Words That
That
Help and Words Hurt and Words
words,
That Heal.
yeah.
I'm sorry if I have the title wrong, because I've started reading that book, and it was really it really struck me the way Joseph Teleschkin talked about how even positive comments can wind up having a negative impact, how we must not talk about other people even in complimentary ways. Certainly to compliment the person to their face, but not talk about people in complimentary ways, because you can't predict the reaction of the person who is hearing the story or what's going to happen down the line. So that whole idea of saying, but this is innocent, it's true, it's nice, it's wonderful, but really to stop and think all the time, what's the unknown impact? What is the impact my words can have that I can't even imagine at this moment? I better, to just be really careful about what we say.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, that is a great book. Do you happen to remember any of I could probably come up with one, but any of the examples of why, like, saying something positive about someone might have a
Yeah, he
unintended
calls it
impact?
non-defamatory and true remarks. For instance, I was at a party at so and so's house last night. It's absolutely gorgeous what they've done with the kitchen. And you don't know, are you speaking to someone who says, wow, they wouldn't contribute to my charity, because they said they couldn't afford it, but you told me they've just
Mm,
redone their kitchen, something innocent like that to comp
mhm.
me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or how come they didn't invite me to the party? Or, all the ways that it can go wrong, even though you're trying to say someone did a beautiful job.
Hmm. Yeah, no, and that's tough. This is really hard stuff. I mean, the um because one of the things implicit on the example that Susan's giving is we didn't mean any harm. We thought we were doing something good in this example. I was just telling the truth, or I was just saying what a good time, but it could have a negative impact, and therefore we shouldn't say it. And is that too high a bar? Joyce, what do you think?
All of these things, they're very thought provoking. It really is something I think we need to think about. There's a saying that goes something like, I may forget what you say, I may forget what you do, but I will always remember how you made me feel. So
Mm,
how is it going to make that person feel if you're complimenting a person that didn't have money to give to a charity, but had money to redo their whole kitchen? I think the question becomes, how will this make this person feel when we're speaking? Because I think that's the bottom line impact,
mhm.
maybe.
Yeah, really important consideration. And that's hard because sometimes we don't even know what impact,
Mhm.
how it's going to make them feel. Oh, are they going to have vicarious pleasure about hearing about this party? Or are they going to be envious? Or are they going to be
Mhm.
mad because they weren't
Will this make them
invited?
feel bad?
Yeah, we don't know.
Mhm.
We don't know. There's a story I probably told it in the book, but I don't remember for sure, to be honest. It's one of these 19th century Hasidic rabbi stories where it was in a small village and there was someone who loved to gossip and he heard something really juicy about one of the business owners. And so he told everybody about it. And people were so aghast that they stopped going to his store. And so the guy went to the rabbi and he says, my business is ruined. What? This guy told everyone the story. And so the rabbi called this person in and he said, were you kind of spreading tales about so and so? He's like, yeah. He's like, well, he came to me distraught because he ruined his business. And the guy said, well, but what I said was true. And the rabbi answered him, true, not true, what does it matter? You destroyed his reputation. And so the guy was realized what he'd done and he felt very distraught. And he said to the rabbi, well, what can I do? And he said, okay, well, take this knife and this feather pillow and cut the pillow open and open the window and then let all of the feathers out. He's like, great. Now I want you to go and gather all those feathers and put them back in the pillow. And he said, well, that's impossible. I can't do that. And they've spread everywhere. And he said, well, that's exactly what happens with gossip. Once you've said it, it's too late. It can't be unsaid and it spreads everywhere. Bonnie.
If we're going to do Lashon Hara, I had the privilege of teaching the Hebrew high school for about 10 or 12 years. And we had major discussions about Lashon Hara and why there are three
Could you
people.
explain what Lashon Hara is?
I'm sorry, it's gossip. It's the tongue that's bad, basically, if you translate it from the Hebrew. And we talked about why there are three people who can be hurt by Lashon Hara. The person who says it, the person who hears it, and the person who it's being told about. And this was one of the pieces of the social action class I taught, the SETIC class, that really they're now adults and they come back to me with that. It had such an impact on them. And I really didn't really understand that concept until I was an adult. And I don't think we all think about the fact that there's a third person that's being affected by it.
Yeah, for sure. Beth.
I found myself when I'm talking, I've heard a story from someone and it is a good illustration of what we're talking about. And in the past, I had a habit of, saying, oh, well, I know someone that this happened to, blah, blah, blah. And I finally realized that I have to stop myself when I say, wait, it's not my story to tell. I can tell a story about my own past, mistakes I've made, or something that I did that illustrates something with this conversation, but I cannot use anyone else because I can only tell my own story. So I have to stop and just say, it's not my story to tell.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Susan.
Thanks. Even though I spoke before about don't even say nice things about people, I find there's a lot of gray area in here because if I know something really defamatory and I want to tell someone for their protection, or, where are the gray areas? Where are the ethics in this? Where if I'm really worried for someone's safety, may I speak ill of a person or where are the boundaries?
Yeah, really glad you brought that up. And I won't try to answer that question, of course, but it's really important to think about. It's like we're not supposed to, if there's a fire, you should yell fire. If someone is threatening to do something or to harm someone, we should speak out. So like all soul traits, it's not like too much silence is also bad. This is a good opportunity to look at the soul traits spectrum diagram. Just on the subject of truth, just a reminder from a few months ago, if we had too much truth, the downside is hurtful speech. So that's exactly what we're talking about here. We don't want to have as much truth as possible. We want to balance, the impact of of truth on someone else, and how we transmit the truth is through silence or speech. So, too little silence can lead to hurtful speech, which I think is what we're talking about, and that can be very hard to predict. But too much silence could lead us to a lack of helpful speech. I mean, the story of creation of the world at the beginning of the book of Genesis was God created the world with speech. Let there be light, and there was light, etc., etc. So if you can create the world, if you can create your world with what you say and what you don't say, it seems like a lot to think about, a lot of responsibility. Um, the mantra for this, I really like this saying from Rabbi Lefin of Satanov, who wrote Great Mussar book, Heshbon HaNefesh. What benefit will my speech bring me or others? It's similar to the WAIT acronym, right? It's like, what's so let me pause here. More comments, reactions to the spectrum. Does this clarify anything for you? Yeah, Wendy.
Well, first of all, I really like that mantra because when Bonnie said wait, I made it a little mantra. I said, wait, what wait? WEIGHT. So wait, what weight will your words carry?
Ah.
That's why that was like, so it was WWW. But I was thinking about the spectrum, and I was thinking if you have too little silence, um, in other words, you're just going on and on about something, it could lead to being ignored when something that you have to say is vitally important. So I
Hmm.
guess that's one of the reasons we want to try to have that balance.
Yeah, the boy who cried wolf, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
okay, so we'll do another reading from Rabbi Sheffa Gold. What's happened here? I think I shared the wrong thing. Here we go. Could someone unmute and read this, please?
As the young rebel, my truth sometimes lacked kindness. My passion for justice sometimes shattered peace. Over a lifetime of mistakes and repentance, wisdom gradually emerges to call together kindness and truth and to kindle the love between justice and peace.
Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, so what is Rabbi Gold talking about here? What does it mean, my truth lacked kindness? My passion for justice shattered peace.
When your friend says, "Do these pants make me look fat?" you say yes. That's true, but not kind.
Yeah. One of my former rabbis, Rabbi Sarah Weissman, did a whole high holiday sermon about the movie The Invention of Lying, talking about this, and she used that very example. You know, there is only one right answer to do these pants make me look fat? Have there been times in your life where you can look back and say, okay, maybe I was just a little bit too zealous in my speech and speaking for what I thought was a good cause or a righteous cause, but maybe, you know, what I said was harmful. Yeah, Bonnie.
Doesn't have to be harmful. and it doesn't have to be helpful if the person just wants to vent.
Hmm.
They're not asking for help. They're not asking for your opinion. They just need to vent. And for me, and I said it, I'm a fixer. I'm a doer. Let's, get in there and get that taken care of and make it all work. And there are days that I don't want somebody to solve my problem, although I do need a personal secretary. I've come up with that. So I've solved it myself, but somebody had suggested it. Yeah,
Thank you, Bonnie.
sure.
Aaron and then Wendy.
I have a few choice favorite words, and one of them is tact. And I think that just plays a big role here. If we're going to say something, and sometimes we need to, it's better than staying silent. Um, I think this whole thing about we don't know who we're saying something to, positive or negative, and how it translates is to use our best judgment and be tactful.
Hmm.
And we're human. We can't really do better than that. Um, One of my other favorite words is integrity, but I'll bring that up another time. But I just think that tactful is a word that's usually at the forefront of my thoughts, regardless of what I have to say.
Thank you, Karen.
And that's my share.
Great. Wendy.
I think I can admit this to you guys. I got into the middle of somebody else's argument one time to try to protect the one person I saw that was the weaker. That was not a good thing to do. I learned a good lesson. And yes, tax might have come in handy in that, but also just not doing it because it really didn't end up, it ended up very poorly and lasting for a lot longer than it probably would have lasted if I would not have gotten involved. I mean, and it's not like me to get involved, but I was hurting for the person who was just taken aback and not able to like speak for himself. But not good timing, way off the spectrum of silence.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people's righteous indignation going around and feeling like it's their job to kind of set everybody else straight. And that's really toxic. It's just really counterproductive a lot of the time. Yeah, Beth.
I figured out that the only one who can have righteous indignation is God.
Mm.
He's the only one who's righteous and really knows the truth. He knows the end. He knows what's going to happen. He knows it all. And we only see this tiny part of it. And, we think that we're right. Then, later on, we might find out, oh, maybe we were on the wrong side. Or maybe we get more information. But really, the only one who merits having righteous indignation is Hashem.
That reminds me, I'm just looking up someone's name that I'm blanking on. Yeah, that's right. My friend, goodness gracious. Yeah, my friend Mike Spinrad, future rabbi, we have a prayer minion. We get together with a few other people a few times a week. And he told this story this morning, which was so in line with what you're saying, where he was a story about someone who was denouncing Jews to the Romans. This is like a story in the Mishnah and in the Gemara, and he was, telling informing on fellow Jews to the Romans, and they were mad at him. And the rabbis went and spoke to him. He said, "Well, these are bad people. I'm just pulling the weeds. These are not people that we want to have around in our community." And the answer to him was, it's not your job to be the gardener and the weed puller. That's God's job, basically. So it's very similar to what Beth was talking about. And I thought that was very interesting, very profound. Okay, we are going to get ready for a breakout group, and we're going to do something similar to what we did last week, where we're going to think about our own silence practice. And we'll start by looking at um, the mantra, what benefit will my speech bring me or others? And then some of, possible actions. And then with your partner, how might you practice silence in the coming week? And try to be specific, one small action that you can take. So being mindful of what you say, speaking of behavior, not character. Maybe someone wants to unmute and read these while I set these up because I've been talking a lot today.
I'll read. What benefit will my speech bring me or others? Actions. Be mindful of what you say and the words you use. Speak of behavior, not character. Listen more than you talk if you are a talker. Speak out if you're in the habit of keeping your thoughts to yourself. Say only positive things about other people. Do not participate in gossip. Create a time of silence. Meditate longer. Don't yell or speak harshly.
Okay, so I invite you to just think a little bit about the role of speech and silence in your life. Um, and think about what is something you could do? What's a change you could make in your life? And then I will open the rooms and you can discuss with your partner.
Right. 1800 block of Pennington. I think there was only one Pennington Road.
Right. And my friend lived like on the 1800 block up Farrington. So you must have been
Yeah.
really neighbors. Sometime we'll be in a breakout room. We can talk about it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, friends, welcome back. Wow, connections of neighborhoods when people were growing up. Fun stuff. So, pretty long time to kind of talk about what actions you might take. I see Bonnie has jumped in and already raised her hand. So, Bonnie, get us started.
Well, it wasn't an action. It was another one of the slogans from Al-Anon that I thought was appropriate, which is say what you mean what you say, but don't say it meanly.
Hmm,
Nice.
hmm.
I don't think meanly is really a word. It's not an adverb. It's a made-up word, but it works,
It does.
especially if you're on the phone with a representative who isn't listening. So I have learned to say, you know what? I need to end this conversation because I'm going to be rude. I don't want to be. And I'll call back and speak with someone else. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you,
Work.
Bonnie. That kind of raises the question, what if you really do need to speak truth to power? Other ways. I mean, how does this teaching apply? Wendy?
Yeah, we decided be silent and carry a big sign.
Huh. Other ways to set boundaries or to really discontinue a relationship or really tell someone they did something wrong. Um, how might these teachings apply? Yeah, Beth.
Um, I was recently at it was actually a bus. It's a huge parking lot with buses and benches for waiting. It's a bus called a bus station, and waiting for a bus, and a man came and sat on the other end of the bench, and I was being rude, and I I was taken aback, and I didn't really know what to say. And I didn't say anything, which was probably the second best thing I could have done. But I got up and I moved away out of his sight and realized there was another bench where I could wait until my bus came. Um, but afterward, and I'm riding in my bus going, what I should have said. And I realized that, calling out sin is one of the things that we should do. I felt convicted that I should do. And I thought I should have stood up and just said, shame on you, shame for what you're doing. And I could walk away and at least have let him know that I did not approve of what he's doing, that I don't think God approves of what he did. And I didn't have to say it. I could have, oh, well, I would not have said it nicely, but I didn't have to say it meanly, but it's like I should have called him out on it. And I think that would have been speaking truth because it was a shameful thing.
Thank you, Beth. Sounds like a stressful situation.
Yeah, I've seen penises before.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. Uh, other things, people come up with a practice that you would like to, anyone have a practice they'd like to share or an insight or something that they're going to try in the coming week? Hi, Martin.
Oh, hi. I think I got a late notice that you're having a meeting today, so I just signed on right now. What's the question?
Okay, well, that's a long, we just got back from the breakout room.
I'm
so
sure
we
you
were
did. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about, like a practice you could do for silence. So it's might be a little hard to jump in, and we'll come back to you at the end. Unless you have something you want to share.
Oh,
Okay.
Well, I'm going to continue asking myself, do I really need to say this? It's kind of like what Bonnie was saying about why am I talking? It's like if I'm in a conversation with a group, if somebody said something similar, I don't have to say, well, that's just like something that happened to me. I can just say, it's been noted in the group, and they don't need to hear me.
Thank you, Beth. So we'll have Nico and then Karen.
Hi. We had a nice conversation with Caroline and Karen, and we discussed something. And because we all thought it was quite powerful, I thought I'd share it with everyone. It's something that my wife, who's a very wise person, told me as a practice. I would choosing my words more carefully. And the advice my wife gave me was always choose your words carefully because it shows respect in three ways. It shows respect to the person you're talking to. It shows respect to the language and the way we communicate. And it shows respect to yourself and your own ideas and what you're trying to communicate. And we all agreed that it was something worth sharing. So here it is.
I love that. Thank you for sharing it. Karen and then Susan.
I think unless someone is under threat, we can always take a couple of seconds to decide what it is that we want to say, or if that's not the right time for us to chime in. At least that's what I teach my kids. And that also relates to humility, knowing your space and your place. Sometimes people feel rushed to have to say something. And I didn't figure this out myself. This was something that, I had been told and worked at and found it really helpful to take a couple seconds. It doesn't have to be longer than that, but take a breath before you respond or don't answer, and give someone else a chance to continue.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Susan, you will get the last word. Or second to last word. I always get the last word. But
Okay. I actually would like to speak more in the interest of making connections. Um, so the people, there are always people on my list that I need to check in with. How are they doing? How are they feeling? To actually pick up the phone and make the calls, or, to text people and say, do you want to get together? Do you want to go walking? To open up conversations with people or to get to know people better through speech instead of living in my own little world where I love being quiet.
Mm. Thank you, Susan. Okay. Well, I did say, Martin, we'd come back to you. Is there anything you want to share before we
Uh,
go?
yeah, it sounds like the question is just how do we use judgment to say something or not? So it's just basically, so my comment would be just really kind of pay attention to the timbre of the other person,
Mm.
and then just use one's own judgment to say,
Thank you, Martin. You're frozen, but you shared a really good point. So we will close the way we always do with a short meditation. So I invite you to close your eyes, take in a nice leisurely inhale and a nice leisurely exhale. And we will sit in silence. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Friends, thank you so much for being here today. It is a big pleasure, as always, to learn from you, to hear your stories. And if you're watching the recording, thank you so much. You've really stayed to the very end. Please give this video a like or a share. Follow us on the American Mussar channel and come by and join the email list and join us in person.